What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It has almost been 3 years since I got my 2022 Chevy Bolt EUV, so I wanted to give you guys an update. Now, I made a 1-year update, and a lot of you guys have probably seen that video, but I thought it was time to give you an update as I'm nearing the end of my lease here in just a few months. Kind of talk about what I'm thinking in the future and kind of how the Bolt has held up for me over the last 3 years. And things like build quality and overall performance, battery life, all that kind of stuff. Just give you guys my real world experience with it. And I hope it helps inform your all's decision if you decide to pick up a Bolt as well. So let's start with a follow-up to my 1-year review video. In that video, I talked about how I had a few quality control issues with my Bolt that needed fixed. One of them was the lining around the rear liftgate at the top. It was kind of protruding out and causing the seal to not be exactly right. So I had to get that fixed. I had the handle underneath my driver's seat come off because I do have manual seats. I have a lower level Bolt. So that had to get fixed as well. There's one other thing. Oh, I was having issues with the door not locking, but that actually ended up this time around being a button combination that you can press on the key fob. One of my viewers left a comment letting me know how to fix that, and that was much appreciated. That fixed the problem. But it didn't stop there with the door issues, and I'll get to that in just a second. But all of those issues I was able to get fixed pretty quickly using my warranty. Since I am leasing the vehicle, I have a warranty basically throughout that entire time. I was able to get those fixed for no additional cost to me. It was just kind of an inconvenience to have to take it to service. But other than that, no issues there. Another thing that I let you guys know in that video is I accidentally took my Bolt up on a curb. Just all user error there. But I had them check that out and I had no actual issues like I thought I might have. No issues with my steering or any wheel issues, nothing like that. It all checked out perfectly fine. Now, I've mentioned this a few times in other videos and we've talked about it extensively on the Metz Tech podcast. I made an entire channel just for the podcast, so head on over and subscribe to that channel so you don't miss those episodes. We've talked about the Bolt a whole lot. And one of the things that I mentioned, both me and my co-host Colin, is that we were waiting to get our battery upgrades done. So if you're unfamiliar, there were 2 different software updates. During the first batch of recalls, GM put out a software update that prevented you from charging above 80%. This was a protective measure so people weren't overcharging. So I had that for a long time, so I could only ever charge to 80%. But once they determined whether you fell into one of those 2 categories, whether needing a new battery altogether or just getting the additional software update, that second software update would potentially allow you to charge back to 100%. The issue is there's an intermediary period there. It's about 5,000 to 7,000 miles where it basically checks your battery through that whole time, monitors it, makes sure that everything is good to go. And then after that period, it will allow you to charge back up to 100%. So I got that secondary software update very recently and am still in that middle period where it's testing my battery to make sure it's good to go. Then I'll be able to charge back to 100%. But because I'm still in that middle ground, I still can't charge to 100%. Not that I would anyway, because it's not good practice for long-term battery health, and I don't need the extra 20 miles of range or whatever. It's fine, I'm good with charging to 80%. I've been doing it for a long time now. So with that in mind, only charging to 80%, I get about 224 to 227 miles of range in the summertime, depending on how much climate control you use. That's gonna play a huge part in your overall range. And that brings us to our second season, which is the winter season or the fall winter season when it's a little bit colder. My range drops down to like 150 to 180 miles of range, depending on how much climate control I use. If I'm absolutely blasting the heat all the time, which I tend to do, I'm a naturally cold person, I am in that like 140 to 150 range. That just means I have to charge my car more often during the winter. So a lot more times I'll bring it in the garage, slap it on the charger. I'll have to do it every couple days instead of being able to get away with like once a week. Now, mind you, I don't drive very much, so your mileage literally may vary there. You may have to charge every day depending on your commute and if it's really cold in your area or really hot in your area. Just depends. As long as you're maintaining good charging habits, staying around that like 3 to 80 range, not blast charging all the time, but kind of trickle charging and maintaining in that sweet spot, you should be able to take care of your battery for a long time and get good performance out of your ownership time. So that's where my range sits. And all those other problems I talked about, I did get fixed a few months after making that last 1-year review. But then I had another problem. And I know this is gonna sound like a complete first world problem, but it really was super inconvenient. And that was that my door locks either worked completely randomly or not at all. So for example, the keyless access button on the side of the door panels, there's one on the driver's side door and one on the passenger side door. I would push that and it would unlock 2 of the 4 doors. And the most frustrating part is it was never the doors that I was actually pushing. So if I pushed the one on the passenger side door would stay locked, but it would unlock the driver's side rear door and the driver's door. So I'd have to walk all the way around and hope that by that time when I'm walking around, my car didn't automatically lock. Or I'd hit the driver's side keyless access and it wouldn't open the driver's side, it would just unlock the rear door. And it started off being just kind of hit or miss. I'd have to push it a few times, and then it became where it would not work at all. And I had literally 1 door that would unlock when using my key fob or the keyless access button, and that was the rear driver's side door. So what I'd have to do is either push the keyless access button or hit the key fob, unlock, open my driver's side passenger's door, and then climb in and reach over the passenger seat or the driver's seat to open one of my 2 doors. Then I'd climb in and open the other one. It was a complete pain, and it was like this for like a month and a half. So it's super cold. I've got my coffee in my hand. I have to put my coffee on top of my car, open the backside door, climb in and do the reach around, unlock the door. It was a complete disaster. And it was pretty embarrassing too when you were in a parking lot having to do that. Finally, I said, I am sick of this. I am not waiting until the end of my lease. I am taking this in and getting this problem fixed. It's so inconvenient. So I went in, scheduled service, and what do you know? It needs new door lock actuators on every single door. Luckily, that also was covered under warranty, so I didn't pay a single penny for that, and I now have 3 of the 4 doors fixed. Unfortunately, they only had 3 in stock, so I had to wait and get another one for my final door. Now again, I was lucky that it was under warranty. Had this have broken in like 5 years, 7 years, or something like that, when I would have had to pay out of pocket for it, I would have been pissed. That is something that absolutely should not break in under 3 years. But I guess all things considered, it's not that big of an issue, but it is super frustrating, and it would have been even worse if I would have had to pay out of pocket to fix it. Now let's talk about my other cabin materials. I have the cloth seats, and I was a little bit concerned, to be honest, how they would hold up over time after just continuous use over and over and over again, and how the overall material would actually hold up. So I wanted to give you guys a little up close and personal look inside the Bolt so you can kind of see how the materials have held up in person, no editing, but I wanted to give you guys a real up close look so you can see, and I can kind of point to some things where it hasn't held up as well. As far as the seats, you know, you get a little bit of gunk in the crevices and stuff that can be vacuumed or lint rolled and cleaned, but it's held up pretty well outside of a few little, you know, things here and there. Also, if you need a little bit more organization inside of your Bolt, I highly recommend getting one of these little organizers for the little bottom opening under the center console area. I've got clips here on screen of it, but it basically takes that entire kind of pad or pocket and divides it up into 3 smaller pockets so you can kind of keep things more controlled and more organized. I'll have a link in the description if you want to pick one of these up for yourself. So I've got the all-weather mats in here, and I cleaned these so you could kind of see a little bit better how they've held up, but yeah, they've done pretty well. You know, the colors faded a little bit, but they've held up pretty nice over the 3 years. As far as the seats go, you know, you get a little bit of a butt indention here from where you sit. I'm not a heavy guy by any means, but there is a little bit of an indention there where you can see where you sit, but the bolsters have held up nicely. The stitching's holding up nicely. Side bolsters have held up really well. You know, you get little dog furs and hairs and things, but all that can come off real easily. Head bolsters fine, back bolsters fine. As far as holding up, you know, they're not the most comfortable seats, you know, it's just the fact of the matter, but they have held up pretty well. Now, I don't have a ton of people that sit in the back seats outside of my dogs, and I honestly think they've held up pretty well. They look pretty clean, bolsters look good. You know, you could wipe them down a little more, but yeah, for cloth seats, I think they've held up pretty well. The only other thing I really wanted to point out is back here on the trunk area. Now, I'm gonna bring this light over here. One of my biggest regrets is that I wish I had gotten an all-weather mat for back here, just because it would have helped this carpet do a little better. You know, you got some, you know, suitcase wheel lines and things like that in here, and it's just not the most rugged carpet. So I would have put an all-weather mat back here to keep this carpet in better shape, even than it is. It's held up okay over the last couple years, but definitely I would recommend getting an all-weather liner for back here. And then up underneath as well, you know, it looks pretty good back there. A couple scuffs and stuff. It's not the most durable carpet, so definitely worth a liner back here. But also on the sides, seeing as this is all plastic right here, it takes an absolute beating. And not even like, it's not like a lack of being careful. It's just, you know, if you have something back here, like a box or any kind of plastic, if it slides at all, it's going to interact with this siding here and just get little scuffs and scratches, and it just gets beat up. So maybe some kind of little cover here or wall here that kind of, maybe a liner that has a little lip on it would have helped some of this not get so beat up. So hopping here into the interior, you can kind of see, you know, all of the grips and stuff have held up well. You don't have a lot of kind of wear and tear on the grips. They still look nice. The buttons still look good. You know, for the most part, just your normal average wear. Screen still looks good. I don't have any like dead pixels. I don't have any issues with the responsiveness. Everything's still great there. So I've had no issues whatsoever with any software at all on the Bolt. You know, this little screen has held up really nicely as well. I don't have any dead pixels on it either, or any issues with performance on that screen. You know, everything else just has your normal kind of wear and tear. This is really the biggest crumb and dust magnet. Stuff gets trapped down there. So, you know, you got to kind of use one of those little air guns or whatever to kind of clear that out every once in a while and kind of dust off this whole area. This for sure is the main kind of culprit when it comes to dirt and grime and the cup holders. Stuff gets trapped inside of these little gears. And if you just get one of these little brushes like this from AutoZone, I think it was a couple bucks at AutoZone, you can kind of get in there and get all the crumbs and dust out from inside of the little crevices here, because that's really where you see most of the issues there. And then down here in the parking brake, I get that out too. And as far as the driving performance, it still feels exactly the same to me as when I originally got it. I'm not having any issues, any weird noises, or decreased acceleration, or really any issues with the performance of it whatsoever. Really, the only performance issue I could even note has to do with the tires. I feel like maybe because of how long I've had it, I feel like the tires have maybe started to wear down a little bit. And when it rains and I'm turning and you accelerate, there's like so much torque that goes into the wheels right away that I feel like it kind of like slips and doesn't gain traction right away. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. It could completely be just that my tires are kind of worn down by now. I know you typically replace your tires every 3 to 5 years if you drive 12 to 15,000 miles. I don't drive anywhere near that. I'm only at like 26,000 miles right now, and I've had it for almost 3 years. So I don't feel like my tires should be worn down that much in under 3 years, but I do feel like there's a little bit of a traction issue there. And again, could be the tires, could just be how much torque is going into the wheels at that given time. Could be there's a lot of oil on the road. I don't know, but that's the only thing I've noticed, that it does get a little dicey when it rains. And before I talk about what EV I'm considering for my next vehicle when my lease is up in May, I did want to give a quick shout out to one of my subscribers that sent me this. This is the OEM Bolt EUV badging, the red line badging. So it's got the little three-dimensional black and red elements on the side. You guys may or may not know, I made my Bolt EUV redline badge before they even announced that there was a Bolt EUV redline option available. I did this basically exact same thing, except without the little, you know, 3D element in the background. And then like a month or two later, they were like, hey, a redline's coming out. So probably just watched off my video and wanted to do it. But I had a subscriber email me and say they could get me official Bolt EUV badging, and they gave me a bunch of them. If you guys want one of these red line badges for your Bolt, drop a comment down below and I'll pick one and send them to you guys. So what am I gonna do next? That is the thing that I've been thinking about nonstop. Colin and I have talked about it on the podcast nonstop, and it's been really tough to think about. But I was basically down to 3 vehicles. I was considering the Equinox EV, I was considering the Hyundai Ioniq 5, and I was considering a Tesla. And really what it ultimately boils down to for me, like probably a lot of you guys, is just cost. I don't have $800–900 to spend per month on my car. I just don't. My current car payment, $275. I already know that that's an impossibility in 2024, but I'm hoping that I don't have to make this massive jump into the $700 range to get a car that I actually want. So that's why I'm looking in that price point, the Equinox EV, the Ioniq 5, and then a Tesla. So price is a huge one, and then there's really 3 things that I want it to have. I want it to have a semi-autonomous driving system, at the very least an advanced adaptive cruise control. It's gotta be a year upgrade, so I don't wanna like go back. I don't wanna get like a 2020 or something like that. I always have to progress because I want the latest battery tech, and I really would like more comfortable seats. Now I mentioned in this video that the Bolt seats don't bother me, but after sitting in some other seats, I'm like, I think I'll do an upgrade here. Outside of that, I don't really care about leather. I don't really care about having a sunroof. I don't really care about having heated seats even. I know a lot of those things will just come with getting a new car that's a little bit more expensive, but they're not deal breakers for me. And obviously it has to be electric. I'm not going back to a gas car. So that's why I basically boiled it down to the Equinox EV, the Ioniq 5, and a Tesla. So the Equinox I was definitely open to and very interested after taking a look at the Blazer EV on this channel. The problem is the base model's not coming out for a while. I wouldn't want the base model anyway, and the prices I just don't think justify the functionality. Plus, it doesn't really have a strong semi-autonomous driving system. I've messed with Super Cruise a little bit. It's just not my favorite system. It's not terrible, but I mean, you can get much better systems on much less expensive cars. So then I moved to the Ioniq 5, and I really like the Ioniq 5, and I think there's a lot of good deals that you can get on them right now. My problem with the Ioniq 5 is I think the cabin materials are a little bit cheap, and I just think it might be a little too expensive. And if I'm gonna be spending that type of money, I probably would just get a Tesla. So that's kind of where I've ended up. So currently I'm down to two options. I'm either going to get a Model Y or a Model 3, and I can't really decide which one. I know that in 2024, they took away the incentives on the Model 3 non-performance. So they thought it was gonna drop to like $3,200 off for the tax credit, but now it's at $0. So the Model Y still has the $7,500, so that's a huge, pro for the Model Y. But a Tesla kind of checks all those boxes. They have the full self-driving, or at the very least, the advanced auto steer option that I could add on if I really wanted to. They have, better materials for the seating surfaces and things like that. And I know Teslas have a whole host of their own problems. Every vehicle does. That's really not a deciding factor for me. It's more so all those other things. So the semi-autonomous, the more comfortable seats, which I think just without question, Teslas have more comfortable seats. And then obviously it's gonna be more modern because I'm gonna be getting a 2023, 2024. So I don't know. I'm still deciding whether I'm gonna get a Model Y or going to get a Model 3. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think between those two options, or if you have another option that you want me to check out, definitely let me know down in the comments. I've looked at other things like that new Volvo, kind of interested in that. It's kind of cool, but I just don't know if it checks all of those boxes. And like I said, there's other options out there. There's the Volkswagen ID4. And for those of you that did make it all the way to the very end of this video, thank you so much. I wanted to give you guys one extra little nugget. I filmed this video about 3 weeks before the updated Model 3 for 2024 became available in the US. And after watching a ton of videos on the Model Y, the 2023 Model 3, and then that updated 2024 Model 3, something about it just stuck in here. And you may or may not be seeing one on this channel very, very soon.